Mads, when we think about university culture, there is so much to navigate.
Yeah.
We think about drinking, think about drugs, think about the lifestyle and the way we live, our well-being.
Yeah.
When we think about all these things, there is a tension that people naturally feel.
Yep, for sure. And I suppose that a lot of that tension is, how much do I embrace the culture and get involved in it? How much do I avoid it? Because that can be the other danger, is you completely cut yourself off from it. And I suppose for some people it's like, actually, I'm so fearful of it that I don't even want to think about it. And that's why it's really important, I think, for us to discuss this, and for those going off to university to realise that the culture is different, and it will be different, and it will feel like a tension, but that's okay. And one of the areas that I see that tension a lot, especially at the moment with this generation, is in the area of well-being as well, and what that looks like as you head off to university and you're away from home, essentially.
Yeah. And I'd love to kind of unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
Love your wisdom and insight. As a student worker right now who's navigating and discipling and walking with students who are navigating some of these cultures, what are you noticing as predominant cultures on campus? And I'd love to hear, especially on the well-being thing that you mentioned, what are you noticing?
Yeah. I think one of the beautiful things about this generation is their openness in the area of well-being and mental health. And that's brilliant, because it means they're more willing to talk about it, which is really, really important and really key. And so many of my conversations as a student worker with my students over coffee, the conversations are around well-being and how do you access that support at university. And it's more accepted than ever. And there are so many students who use and access the well-being services on campus, and every campus has them. So I guess make sure you know where they are and what they look like. But so many of my conversations are encouraging them to make use of that, so that actually, yes, there's a culture of talking a lot about mental health, but it also should be a culture of accessing all the support that there is available, because it only takes an exam being really stressful, or drama with your housemates, or something going on with a relationship that you're having, for things to get harder, and you're away from home, and things do feel like more of an explosion when you don't have that support network that you're used to growing up with.
Yeah, it's so true. And I love that perspective, and I love that help is available. Yeah. And we shouldn't feel bad to wanting to access it. Another, I think, key culture in university is relationships. Yeah. Now again, there is a bit of a shift in the culture to when I was at uni. I feel like I keep showing my age as I talk about that. But when I joined uni, there was a real pressure to be in relationships. Yeah. I felt like everyone was coupling up when we were on a night out or any socials. It was all about who is with who, how do you get into a relationship, and if you weren't in one, you felt like something was off here. Yeah. But that isn't the culture now. Something has shifted, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's changed slightly. What we're observing amongst Christian students, but also students outside of the church as well, is that there are less official relationships, or things that are labelled relationships. And still as much, if not more, sleeping together, which is an interesting shift, because there's less of a label, maybe less commitment to it. But I think that can be really hard to navigate, especially as a Christian as well, because it's not just those outside of the church that are living that lifestyle, it is those within the church as well. And I found as a Christian, you're like, how do you navigate that culture when it's your peers and the people who are supposed to be encouraging you in your faith, who are also kind of navigating that tension and working out how they live for Jesus and how they navigate temptation as well. So I think a lot of what I would say to that is like learning to embrace the singleness and realizing your identity in God first, because otherwise the danger can be you find your identity in that physical attraction to someone else, or that night, or this, that, and the other, and before you know it, your whole identity is reliant upon another person first rather than God first. Yeah,
and actually on the book, I love, I'm just going to read this out. It's a beautiful quote on what it means to be in a relationship. And it says this: many students go to university hoping that they will meet someone. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a good idea to not make it a main thing. If God isn't already the number one priority, then a relationship won't be able to complete us. Rather than finding the right partner, we should concentrate on becoming the right partner.
It's good.
I love that. And I think it sums up some of the idea around being rooted in Christ, who we are, embracing singleness, if that's what it looks like, and navigating what that season is. Mads, for a young person watching this right now who's probably going, I'm kind of excited at the opportunity of being in a relationship at uni. What is one thing you would tell them as a piece of advice?
I would say don't compromise your identity in God by trying to find it elsewhere. There will be that pressure, there will be that temptation, but I would say that's where accountability is really important. Find those around you who will hold you accountable, who will call you out for things, but who will also be there to champion you and to cheerlead you and to help you along the way, so that you can actually live with such integrity that people start to notice it and you represent Jesus really, really well at university and on campus.
Yeah, and the way we live and our lifestyle, all of that is big, isn't it? And then the choices we make with relationships. And another thing, I guess, when we think about culture at university is the money.
Yes.
I don't know about you, I used to love getting the text at the start of a term from student finance.
Oh, it's such a good feeling.
Yeah, it was the best text to receive, wasn't it? The money falling into your account.
Yeah.
It felt for me like there was a bit of a pressure to live a certain way because of all this money. I felt like I was turning up to campus and people had new trainers every other week or whatever. Yes. But I found myself saving a lot of money. Just because of the family and the culture I was brought up in, but I didn't really give. What was your experience with money?
Yeah, I found it hard to give financially,
right?
In terms of actual change or giving through card donations and stuff. But what I enjoyed is giving through practical ways, through acts of service, I suppose. So I remember in first year, it was Valentine's Day, and me and all my housemates decided to buy loads of flowers, loads of roses, and we wrote little notes on them. We put them outside every single room on campus, and it was just a way of blessing people, but also a way of, I suppose, using finances in a practical way that was an act of service that made people feel loved and made people feel at home. And I've had to grow in learning to steward money well, and I suppose realise that everything is God's already, so actually we're just giving back to him, and it's an amazing way to be able to do it. And we often say at the church I'm at, what would it look like to give the equivalent of a coffee a week? So you might be thinking, I don't know if I can give, money is already tight, but some students absolutely love a coffee, and it's what, £3, £3.50 a coffee. What would it look like to sacrifice one coffee a week and instead give that to the church or to a charity, so that you can start to stretch those muscles in giving and learn to steward stuff well and realise it's God's anyway and give back to his kingdom.
So good. I love that as a really practical challenge. And maybe a few practical tips as well would be, don't feel pressured to spend. It's okay. And I'd say budget. Think about the whole semester, not just the first few weeks. Open a savings account, I think, is a really practical one and easy one people can do. And then I'd say a cap on their website have some really cool, really easy, practical tools that you can use on navigating how we spend money well. And I loved what you said, Mads. I think understanding what we have as God's and that we have the ability to steward our finances well is so key. Because you're right, there is a pressure to spend, but remembering again that the money I have is God's and I get to steward it well is so important.
And I think one of the things I found was that during Freshers Week, the pressure to spend was even greater, because there is so much going on. There's so many events, there's so many things going on with friends and meals out and this, that and the other, that there does feel like a pressure to spend in order to build relationships. It almost feels like you're paying in order to make friends, which feels a bit crazy, but this is all part of culture and how we navigate Freshers Week well as well, which is a key part of uni.
And it feels like, I don't know about you, it feels like there's a fear of missing out.
Yeah, for sure.
FOMO's a real thing during Freshers Week. Because you're like, if I'm not there, I feel like I'm missing out on all the stuff that's happening. And also it's so key. I feel like so many friendships are formed around that night out where that thing happened and everyone's talking about it. So there's like a sense of going, oh my God, if I'm not in those spaces, I'm not able to build those friendships. I found a real tension in me during my time at university that I felt like I began finding myself in spaces, maybe even doing things that I wouldn't do, because I didn't want to miss out. There's a real sense of like, if I'm not in that space, the friendships that are being formed aren't going to happen. And I think a real practical way of navigating that is we need to be more accountable.
Sure.
But how do we navigate that culture? How do we navigate the tensions that come along the way?
And Freshers Week is a key part of the culture. I think that one of the things that I would say is that you don't have to go to everything. It can, like Freshers Weeks, there can be something on every single night, and you can feel like you have to go to those in order to build friendships. And I would say, like, make your decisions of what things you're going to say yes to, what things you're going to say no to. I had friends who, from the very start of university, decided they were going to say no to some things, and they put that boundary in place from the very beginning. And that meant that further down the line, they weren't put in sticky situations because their friends knew that's just who they are. We'll respect who they've decided to be. We'll respect their boundaries in that way. Another thing that I would say is look after yourself. A lot of people get ill during Freshers Week. There's a thing called Freshers Flu, which I was chatting to some youth about recently. They had no idea what it was. And it's not some variant of flu that just affects students, but it's because there's so many people in a new environment and people are tired and you're transitioning, you're learning a load of new things, that actually a lot of people just get a cold and it spreads like wildfire. So look after yourself, work out times that you can rest, that you can reset, that you can just slow down, and you can get the rest that you need to recuperate. And then the last thing I say, which I think is key to culture and building friendships, is that you can build just as deep friendships sat around the kitchen table chatting with your housemates. Like, make that a part of the culture that you want to see, because you can have such amazing conversations around a table and around food. Jesus did it all the time. And you can build even deeper relationships that way than going on a night out and building a friendship around drama. So make your friendships key, and use the opportunities that aren't to do with nights out and Freshers Week as another way to build friendships.
It says in Romans 12, verses 1 and 2, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will." As you've been hearing this conversation, so much of the need to conform is around fear. Fear of what we might miss out on, fear of who we need to become. So as even in this moment, what emotions are you noticing come? What are you feeling? And I just encourage you to make note and pray.
For more resources on preparing for university, including the Student Linkup Sessions workbook, visit fusionmovement.org.